In a world made up of humans and anthropomorphic animals living side by side, Hollywoo is home to civilians, star-studded red carpets, and the celebrities that walk on them. And one of those celebrities is the washed-up star of the 1990s Bojack Horseman. Now living in relative obscurity in the Hollywoo Hills mansion, Bojack plans a monumental comeback to celebrity relevance with a tell-all autobiography to be written by a ghostwriter. Yep, today we're covering Bojack Horseman. This one's not for kids, just fair warning. Let's start off by introducing ourselves to the main characters. Bojack Horseman is always surrounded by a gang of kooky characters, each adding their own special thread to the tapestry of Bojack's life. Living with Bojack is Todd, Bojack's roommate. He's known as a freeloader, and sometimes he isn't exactly discreet about it. Always hot on Bojack's tail is his demanding agent and former girlfriend, Princess Carolyn. A cat who always lands on her feet, she's there to solve any and all of Bojack's problems, of which there are a lot. But how did Bojack become such a star in Hollywoo? How did he break into the scene and become that horse from horsing around? And did he and Mr. Peanutbutter ever truly get a crossover episode? Well, in this episode, we'll answer all those burning questions and more as we look back into Bojack's entire life from start to finish. Here we go. Episode 1. The series opens with Bojack trying to revive his dormant acting career. After a breakup with his girlfriend, Princess Carolyn, the night before, Bojack wakes up hungover and on a mission. As if seeing your ex after the breakup wasn't bad enough, imagine having them as your agent. Well, Bojack does.
Oh geez, here we go.
And Princess Carolyn encourages him to write a celebrity tell-all, a book about Bojack's experiences in the industry and a chance to see the truth behind the set. Bojack struggles to begin the book and procrastinates off his new task until he meets ghostwriter Diane at a party, and the two agree to work together to tell his story. Bojack also discovers, to his disappointment, that Diane is dating Mr. Peanutbutter, his former sitcom rival. This is the first time we meet Mr. Peanutbutter, and it's fair to say that these two do not have an equal friendship.
He's so stupid he doesn't realize how miserable he should be. I envy that.
As in typical excited dog fashion, Mr. Peanutbutter is over the moon to see his old friend, while Bojack, not so much. Episode 2. Bojack hates the troops. The next episode kicks off with Bojack facing public humiliation at a bar where he overhears people mocking him. Things escalate when he's ridiculed by Pam and her friends. Bojack, determined to defend his honor, faces consequences the next day when he wakes up with Pam after a drunken night. As if that weren't enough, Bojack wakes up to find Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter waiting, uninvited, in his kitchen.
Classic Bojack!
Why are you here?
Oh, funny story.
Feeling overwhelmed, he flees in search of breakfast, only to clash with Neil McBeal over a box of muffins at the supermarket. Back at home, Diane delves into Bojack's troubled past, revealing the dysfunctional Horseman family dynamics. However, their trip down memory lane is cut short when Neil threatens to expose Bojack's behavior to the media.
Have you no shame, Bojack Horseman?
Instead of apologizing, Bojack stirs up controversy by challenging the heroism of American troops during a live interview. As chaos ensues, Mr. Peanutbutter jumps in, suggesting they settle things at his place. But tensions run high during a televised showdown between Bojack and Neil. Bojack throws punches, calling out political hypocrisy and questioning military heroism. Fed up with the mess, Bojack heads to the roof, where Diane confronts him about his honesty. Finally, he agrees to spill the beans, opening up about his troubled past shaped by alcoholic parents. Wow. What a wild first 2 episodes. Episode 3, Prickly Muffin. In the episode Prickly Muffin, we learn about Bojack's relationship with former child co-star Sarah Lynn. Bojack's misguided advice to Sarah Lynn that no one will love her except her fans sends her down a dark path of fame and addiction. Now, she's a troubled celebrity battling severe drug addiction, while her fans have moved on to younger artists like Sextina Aquafina. Yep, that is actually her name.
See 14-year-old dubstep wonderkind Sextina Aquafina.
Meanwhile, Bojack grapples with his guilt over leading Sarah Lynn down this path. He tries to help by taking her to rehab, but she ends up crashing at his place, avoiding her problems. Things spiral as Sarah Lynn throws wild parties, catching the eye of Princess Carolyn, who sees potential in representing her. Then, out of the blue, Sarah Lynn drops a bombshell. Their old friend, Herb Kazaz, is dying of colon cancer. Instead of doing the sensible thing and sending Sarah Lynn to rehab again, Bojack and Sarah Lynn's relationship takes a dark turn when they end up having sex. Bojack realizes he can't enable her destructive behavior any longer.
Sarah Lynn, get your coat. I'm taking you to rehab.
And he insists that she needs real help. However, Sarah Lynn dismisses his concerns, stating she feels she's at a place where she doesn't need to grow as a person. and can constantly surround herself with sycophants and enablers until she dies tragically young. And little does she know how much life can imitate art. Episode 4. Zoe's and Zelda's. The episode starts with a flashback to a younger Bojack in the year 1985, trying to make it as a stand-up comedian.
Keep this up and the only thing we're gonna get is our money back. Okay.
Having been heckled, Herb then gives Bojack advice afterwards, believing that Bojack does, in fact, have a lot of potential. Back in the present, Bojack is frustrated over his freeloading roommate Todd for not cleaning up his shit. Later on in the episode, when Bojack and the gang attend a roast, Bojack brings up just how much of a failure Todd is. Diane, however, calls out Bojack's critiques on Todd as saying that he undermines Todd due to his fear of living alone. As if Todd is successful, he will leave. In an attempt to prove Diane wrong, Bojack then begins to help Todd with his rock opera, and their friendship strengthens. However, he also reveals that he became a failure due to his obsession with video games. Bojack takes Todd to get some snacks. It is here where Todd discovers the video game Decapathon 7, the newest game in the franchise that destroyed his life the first time. Bojack warns Todd against relapsing, but Todd buys the video game and ends up playing all night. Todd's all-night gaming session leads to a lackluster performance of his rock opera for potential backers.
More like schlock flabra.
However, it's revealed that Bojack hasn't truly changed for the better. He intentionally placed the game in Todd's path and manipulated him with the help of a store clerk and actress Margot Martindale, jeopardizing Todd's career prospects. That's not great. Episode 6. Our A story is a D story. In this episode, Mr. Peanutbutter picks up Bojack and Diane after their trip, but he's suspicious of Bojack's feelings for Diane. It sparks a competition between Bojack and Mr. Peanutbutter to impress her. Driven mad by Mr. Peanutbutter reminding him that it doesn't matter who wins the games, he still takes Diane to bed. Bojack ends up getting wasted and steals the D from the Hollywood sign.
Police are scrambling to figure out who stole the D from the famed Hollywood sign.
And thus, Hollywoo is born. Mr. Peanutbutter offers to help return the stolen letter if Bojack backs off from pursuing Diane. Meanwhile, Todd gets into some crazy quest that lands him in prison. Bojack hatches a plan with Mr. Peanutbutter to ditch the D, but it backfires when a sitcom rival presents it as a romantic gesture for Diane. Bojack tries to get back at Mr. Peanutbutter by setting up a memoir interview with Diane, but he forgets he's being recorded. Diane returns home to Mr. Peanutbutter, who proposes. Bojack leaves a heartfelt voicemail for Diane,
And I'm sorry if I've been difficult in any way during this process.
but she calls back with big news. She's engaged. Bojack tells her to delete the message. Wow. Drama, drama, drama. Episode 8. The Telescope. The episode begins with Bojack and Diane in the car on the way to Malibu to reconcile with Herb, and along the way, we learn about Bojack and Herb's shared past and how Bojack betrayed him. Flashbacks take us to the 1980s, where Bojack and Herb, aspiring comedians, hit an ABC party. Herb's girlfriend Charlotte warns Bojack about the dangers of fame. The next day, Herb reveals their show idea got picked up, but he insists Bojack must be part of it.
Get rich! Yeah!
Bojack is thrilled, but Herb quickly retracts a kiss, clarifying he's not into guys. Fast forward to the 90s, Horsin' Around is a smash hit, but Bojack and Herb's friendship goes south when Herb gets caught in a scandal of committing lewd acts in public with another man in a police sting. He expects Bojack to have his back since, Herb is the reason Bojack is even famous in the first place, but instead, he chickens out and doesn't defend him. At Herb's place in the present, Bojack tries to make amends, but Herb's not having it. He decides at bare minimum he'll accept the apology from Bojack, but won't give him closure or forgiveness. After they leave, Bojack stops along the highway to collect himself after a pretty intense day. Suddenly, his emotions boil over, leading to a vulnerable moment where he impulsively kisses Diane, leaving us hanging on a major cliffhanger. Episode 8. Horse Majour. The episode picks up with the aftermath of Bojack's impulsive kiss, leading to an awkward drive back to Hollywoo with Diane. Despite Diane's clear message that they shouldn't see each other anymore as she believes she has enough information to finish the memoir, Bojack still remains determined to stop her wedding. He even resorts to hiring character actress Margot Martindale to stage a bank robbery and steal Diane's engagement ring, but his plans fail. As the wedding approaches, Bojack prepares to sabotage it at his restaurant. But Todd withholds crucial information that could help Bojack, that Mr. Peanutbutter is in fact having second thoughts. Instead of telling Bojack the information, Todd suspects Bojack used Margot Martindale to sabotage his rock opera.
Straws are used to drink soda or water, and plants need water.
Leading him to confront Bojack about meddling in other people's lives. Realizing his mistake, Bojack attends the wedding and reconciles with Diane instead of ruining it. Despite the chaos, Everything ends on a positive note. Episode 9, One Trick Pony. The episode kicks off with Bojack being interviewed during the filming of Mr. Peanutbutter's Hollywood heist movie, where the plot is that Mr. Peanutbutter is stealing the D from the Hollywood sign. But we all know that Bojack is obviously the real culprit. While on set, Todd is still reeling from his failed rock opera, deciding to pitch ideas to Quentin Tarantino, causing major script changes that sideline Bojack. Because of this, Bojack suspects that this is Todd's revenge for sabotaging his rock opera. Meanwhile, Diane completes the first draft of Bojack's memoir, One Trick Pony, but Bojack isn't thrilled with how he's portrayed.
Stepped out toward the coast and looked across the water, and for a moment he said nothing.
And refuses to listen to Diane's explanation about telling his story, warts and all. Angered, Bojack demands a rewrite, leading Diane to leak the first chapters through her BuzzFeed friend, Wayne. Bojack feels betrayed by Diane's actions and fires her, despite the attention the leaked chapters receive. It's a whirlwind of drama, leaving Bojack questioning his career and relationships once again. Episode 10, Downer Ending. Bojack and Diane have a heated argument about the memoir in Pinky's office, creating a tense atmosphere for the publisher. Bojack insists he can write a better memoir before the deadline, but he ends up procrastinating by indulging in drugs with Sarah Lynn and Todd. Amidst his drug-induced haze, Bojack reflects on his regrets, including his feelings for Diane and what could have been if he had left the entertainment business with Herb's girlfriend Charlotte. Princess Carolyn interrupts Bojack's hallucinations, informing him that his version of the memoir is unfit for publishing due to the influence of drugs. Reasonably, Bojack acknowledges his mistake and seeks out Diane. He finds her at a ghostwriters convention and apologizes.
It's not too late. Diane, I need you to tell me that it's not too late.
Bojack.
Expressing that he doesn't care about public perception anymore, as long as Diane believes that he's a good person. He even sorta admits to his wrongdoings, but attributes them to his troubled upbringing and terrible parents. In a vulnerable moment, Bojack pleads with Diane to affirm his goodness despite his flaws. However, Diane is unable to provide him with the reassurance that he seeks, leaving both in a poignant silence as they grapple with their complicated relationship. Episode 11. Later, we open in 1973, where Secretariat drops some wisdom on the Dick Cavett show, influencing young Bojack's approach to handling sadness. Sadly, Bojack misses out on the advice due to his parents' loud argument. Once again, Beatrice and Sugar Cube ruin another moment for Bojack. Skipping ahead to the present day, Bojack celebrates his memoir's success with a Golden Globe win.
After party at my restaurant! Why did I say after party at my restaurant?
But his joy is short-lived when he loses the role of Secretariat to Andrew Garfield. Meanwhile, Diane takes the time to ponder her next career move, torn between a philanthropist and the Secretariat movie gig. However, Bojack is given the opportunity of a lifetime, when thanks to Andrew Garfield getting injured, he's able to get a shot at the Secretariat role, fulfilling his lifelong dream. Finding the one person he wants to tell the most, Bojack goes to the roof of Mr. Peanutbutter's house and finds Diane. She gives him a blunt but truthful answer to his question about actions shaping people, which leaves Bojack to reflect on his past choices. He finds solace at the Griffith Park Observatory, where his fame and career began with horsing around, pondering his journey and the impact that he's made. The video ends with Bojack signing an autograph for a young fan, a reminder of his influence and the importance of his actions. Season 2, Episode 1, Brand New Coach. We start by cutting back to young Bojack being engrossed in Secretariat's interview with Dick Cavett. Just as Secretariat is about to answer Bojack's question, "What do you do when you get sad?" Beatrice and Butterscotch start to argue. His mom enters the room after his dad is stormed out and warns Bojack not to sit so close to the TV because it'll make him cruel. It's a bit rich coming from her. Beatrice tells him how giving birth to him ruined her, that he has to become something great to make up for all the damage that he's done. Because that's not gonna stick in your child's head and leave lasting trauma, geez.
You know, I was beautiful before I got pregnant.
Fast forward to the present, and Bojack is listening to an audiobook that says he must affirm every day that I can change, and I will change. This new journey of self-improvement is symbolized by the replacement of his old sofa and the adoption of a new mantra. When Bojack drops in at Princess Carolyn's office, she warns him that he can't mess up the first day of filming for Secretariat, and he assures her that he won't because of his new attitude and lifestyle. However, on the set of his dream film, in his dream role, might I add, Bojack just can't deliver his lines in the right way.
What are you doing here?
Did we get it? I can tell by your face that we didn't get it. All right.
Now, that is just the worst time to have stage fright. Another flashback ensues, and Bojack has invited Beatrice to a taping of Horsing Around. Despite her son's success, she continues to criticize and condescend his career. She even goes as far as to say that he doesn't know how lucky he is to have her, and that she hopes he dies before she does, so he'll never have to know what it's like to lose a mother.
You don't know how lucky you are to have me. I hope you die before I do, so you never have to know what it's like to lose a mother.
Back in the present, Bojack isn't happy, and he asks Diane for advice, which she retorts with what he would have done on Horsing Around. He panics and threatens to leave, with Diane trying to solve the situation by advising her to use an acting coach or do some research. Things go from bad to worse as he picks up the phone to his mother, who reveals to him that she's read his book. She goes on to say that she read the parts about her, and that he must think she's a real monster. But he will never be happy. She explains further that he was born broken by birthright, and that nothing he fills his life with will ever make him whole. She tells him, "You're Bojack Horseman. There's no cure for that." Bojack appears to be distraught, and his mom hangs up after she asks him for an answer to a crossword puzzle, to which he gives her the wrong answer. This was the catalyst he needed, as, despite the emotional toll, his confrontation with his past ultimately leads to growth, as he finally delivers the line, "What are you doing here?" with just enough sadness.
What are you doing here?
Great.
Elsie says they finally got it, and they get to move on to the next scene. Episode 2, Yesterland. In this episode, Bojack finds himself struggling with the loss of his anonymity as people constantly bring up moments from his book during his dates. Frustrated, he seeks solace at his favorite bar, only to discover it's been turned into a tourist attraction based on his life. Desperate for anonymity, he ends up at a roller skating rink, where he meets Wanda the owl, who's oblivious to his fame due to waking up from a 30-year coma. Bojack is instantly attracted to her because she has no idea who he is, which, hey, fair enough. Their connection blossoms, but his insecurities surface when Wanda bonds with another coma survivor over their shared lack of understanding about the last 30 years.
That's insane. I just woke up from a 30-year coma.
Bojack's jealousy leads to chaos at Todd's party when he uncovers a secret about the other man Wanda is with. He's a Soviet sleeper, but in announcing his discovery of a communist spy, Bojack risks losing Wanda in the process. The next day, Bojack attempts to win Wanda back at Todd's unsafe theme park, and they say romance is dead. But amidst the chaos and flames, literally, Todd's theme park is burning down, Bojack realizes that he's ready to step up and be the person that he wanted to be. As they embrace amidst the chaos, it's clear that their love story is anything but ordinary. Episode 3. Still broken. The episode kicks off with a throwback to the Horsing Around taping, where Herb tells the cast that they need to look after one another and to stick together. Fast forward to Herb's funeral, where we learn he met a tragic end. Death by peanuts and a truck collision. Talk about a plot twist. But amidst the mourning, Bojack reconnects with Charlotte, Herb's ex, and reminisces about days long gone. The cast of Horsing Around meet up in Herb's bedroom. Cue the blind executor dropping a bombshell. A floppy disk, supposedly leading to Herb's hidden treasure. Classic mystery vibes, am I right? Bojack convinces the others to get involved by saying they're honoring Herb's last wish. Bradley remembers that there was an old computer in Herb's office that could read floppy disks. The gang arrives at Parrot Mount Studios, where Herb's office is laid untouched and is on a mission, uncovering clues and suspicions left and right. There, they listen to a voicemail saying that the brakes on Herb's car were in great condition, and that if they would only malfunction if someone cut them. Suspicious or what? Wow. They take the information on the floppy disk, which happens to be an address to a storage locker. They head on over to the locker. Inside, they find a briefcase that is labeled gold, but it's empty with only some bear fur in it. Someone beat them to it. Sarah Lynn then has a flashback to the last time Herb and her saw each other, hinting at Herb's mysterious manuscript that he believes it's gold. Accusations fly at the wake as they accuse Henry Winkler of murdering Herb for his book. But Henry has a secret of his own. He admits he does have the manuscript, but that he didn't kill Herb for it. He intended to burn it, as it's awful, and it could ruin Herb's legacy. Bojack realizes that Herb didn't need this book, as his legacy was horsing around. That this whole mission had been because he didn't want to believe that Herb had died for nothing. As Bojack reflects on the past, we're reminded that amidst the chaos, there are moments of brightness and connection. When he turns down the rap party but goes with Herb to the tank, which is only a measly 2 inches of water, where they filmed the Love Boat. Bojack asks Herb if he's scared of the potential success of Horsing Around. Herb laughs and says he isn't, that the future is bright. It's a roller coaster of emotions, but hey, that's life in Hollywoo. Episode 6, Higher Love. We start with Bojack getting his feelings off his chest to everyone's surprise, even his. When he leaves his house, he tells Wanda that he loves her.
Love you.
But of course, this is Bojack, so he ruins the moment by retracting the statement and says, "No, I don't," and he runs out the door. Pretty smooth, if you ask me. In his hurry, he realizes he's forgotten his keys inside. Not wanting to face Wanda, he steals a stroller from a baby and rolls downhill. What a way to get to work. On set, Bojack turns to Diane for advice on his love confession mishap. He realizes he can avoid facing Wanda if he just keeps working. Wow. But Kelsey lays down the law with union rules, forcing Bojack to come up with a distraction. Scrambling for ideas, he asks his coworkers if any of them would want to drink with him. Enter Corduroy Jackson, with his wild tales of autoerotic asphyxiation recovery. If you don't know what that is, I'd recommend staying blissfully ignorant. Don't look it up. But a night out can't last forever, even for an owl. And when Bojack finally goes home, Wanda's waiting for him. He apologizes for that morning, but she says it's fine, because she doesn't love him either. Back on set, Corduroy is waiting for Bojack in his trailer, where he asks Bojack to hold onto his autoerotic asphyxiation kit. Bojack, inspired by the idea, brings up the dangerous hobby to Wanda, testing her love. Bojack tells her that he wants to try autoerotic asphyxiation, which could accidentally kill him, but that if she loves him, then she wouldn't want him to do it. Surprisingly, she tells him to do it. But when Wanda arrives home to find Bojack setting up his risky contraption, and when he nearly chokes himself with the rope, she admits how she feels about him. In the end, he chooses love. But tragedy strikes as the next day, he finds Corduroy hanging in his trailer, having accidentally died from autoerotic asphyxiation. I'm sure none of us saw that coming. Episode 8. Let's find out. Alright, buckle up. This is a wild road on Mr. Peanutbutter's game show, Hollywoo Stars and Celebrities. What do they know? Do they know things? Let's find out. And with Bojack in the hot seat, let's find out what he knows. That said, all the questions that Mr. Peanutbutter peppers Bojack with on the show are either difficult or completely unfair. Bojack, as such, gets all of them wrong. That's no way to treat a friend, come on, man. During the break, Bojack calls out Mr. Peanutbutter for being a bit of a jerk, but the audience eats it up. And to their delight, Daniel Radcliffe joins as a competitor. Even though Bojack and Daniel have met several times, Bojack's ego takes a beating when Daniel can't remember him.
Hey, Daniel, good to see you.
Always nice to meet a fan.
No, sorry, I'm not I'm an actor.
Oof. And it only gets worse for Bojack when Daniel sails through the competition, being asked really easy questions. As the game heats up, Bojack gets some sneaky advice from Princess Carolyn to keep an eye on Mr. Peanutbutter's ears. And then suddenly, he's climbing the scoreboard, much to everybody's surprise. But then, things take a twist when Daniel accuses Bojack of having ulterior motives. Bojack's oblivious, of course, thinking Charity is Daniel's girlfriend. Classic Bojack move. But when Wanda asks him to throw the game for good ratings, Bojack is torn. He goes along with it until he snaps under Mr. Peanutbutter's mockery and begins to air Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter's dirty laundry on live TV.
Cancel the bubble round, cause we're getting real.
Mr. Peanutbutter retorts back, confronting Bojack about kissing Diane, then asking why he doesn't like him when all he has ever done is to be his friend. It gets heated, with Bojack admitting his jealousy of Mr. Peanutbutter's seemingly perfect life. Amidst the drama, Wanda lays down the law, reminding everyone that it's network television and they need to wrap this up as quickly and neatly as possible. Mr. Peanutbutter forgives Bojack. Daniel pipes in, saying that the only way to even the score is for Mr. Peanutbutter to kiss Bojack. Mr. Peanutbutter, of course, agrees to do this, and the two of them kiss. I've heard of hugging it out, but this is next level bro stuff. Back on stage, Bojack decides to risk it all, and is faced with a simple question. Who starred in Harry Potter? Seeing the perfect opportunity to get back at Daniel for earlier, Bojack gets the question wrong out of spite.
Elijah Wood.
Even with all the charity money on the line. Oh, talk about a twist ending. Episode 9, The Shot. When young Bojack sees Secretariat smoke after winning a race and voicing his support for the Vietnam War and Nixon, he tries to smoke too, by stealing a cigarette out of Beatrice's purse. However, when she catches him and he tries to put it out, she makes him finish it. That is an unconventional parenting style, to say the least. Fast forward to the present, Bojack is excited for his first day back on set because they're going to shoot the Nixon scene. But he quickly finds out that the scene has been cut and replaced with something much more wholesome. Bojack argues the film was supposed to be dark and gritty, but Lenny says that doesn't make money. When Bojack questions Kelsey if she's okay with it, she just shrugs and says, "Hey, it's show business." Bojack is seen filming the new scene for Secretariat, which is now wholesome. During the break, he complains to Kelsey, but she says there's nothing she can do about it, as even if she wanted to do the scene, they don't have an Oval Office set. Bojack tells her there's one at the Nixon Library. They could sneak in that night and get the shot there. Meanwhile, Diane Cordova's adventure hits a snag, as Sebastian St. Clair warns her not to spend too much time with locals because she's there to write about him. Back in Hollywoo, the team at the Nixon Library is caught by a security guard, and to keep his silence, Bojack offers to let him play Nixon.
You? No way.
Hello, I'm Nixon.
However, when Kelsey informs Bojack that in this heart-wrenching scene, he has to cry because Secretariat learns his brother is killed in Vietnam, they hit a bump, as Bojack can't cry in front of other people. Kelsey tells him to sit down, gives him a pep talk that really hits home. Bojack looks sad, and Kelsey says she's got the shot, although Bojack didn't cry at all. He goes outside and lights up a cigarette, but after he exhales the smoke, he does break down crying. The victory is short-lived, as he, back on set, Lenny axes Kelsey for going rogue. And just when Bojack thinks things can't get any crazier, Diane shows up on his doorstep, adding another layer to the chaos. The episode starts with Bojack and Wanda standing over sleeping and bedraggled Diane, and Wanda states that she's overstayed her welcome. Todd tries to lighten the mood by asking if they want to fly a kite, but he's promptly rejected. Trying to cheer himself up, Todd begins to walk through town until he comes across a man offering him to join an improv club known as Shenanagags. Bojack's film shoot for Secretariat is a disaster, with the director, Abe DeCatfish, great name, not caring about the mess and assuring everyone it'll be edited in post. Jeez, talk about unprofessional. To put it in his words, Abe doesn't care if they'll get paid or not. They're not making Casablanca. Luckily, Princess Carolyn comes to the rescue with an off-Broadway offer for Bojack. Later on that evening, when Bojack insults the film at Abe's house by comparing it to his new play, Abe exacts his revenge by saying there will need to be a lot of reshoots. Back at home, tensions rise between Bojack and Wanda, leading to a heated argument about New York, with Bojack accusing Wanda of being happy he's now unable to go. Instead of going to work the next morning, Bojack opts for drinking and staying home watching old episodes of Horseman Around. When Todd invites Bojack to his improv graduation show, Bojack brushes it off and completely forgets. But after an angry call from Princess Carolyn, Bojack is sent back to set on the threat of being sued for breach of contract. When Abe spitefully makes him repeat the line, "I'm tired of running in circles," multiple times, Bojack has a realization. Back at home, Wanda tries to distract Bojack with a trip to Santa Barbara, but they begin to argue, and Wanda states that she can't be around someone so bitter and so negative. And then, Wanda delivers this poignant line. You know, it's funny. When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. As Wanda gathers her stuff to leave Bojack, then asks Diane why she can't go home. Feeling lost, Bojack hits the road, while Todd performs in his show to an empty seat where Bojack was meant to be. The episode closes with Bojack standing outside his car face-to-face with Charlotte in New Mexico. The episode continues from where the previous one ended, with Bojack face-to-face with Charlotte. She invites him to her house where he meets her family, Kyle, her husband, and her two children, Penny and Trip. Penny interrogates Bojack, and when he's asked why he's in New Mexico, he lies and says he's here to buy a boat at a boat show.
Because I'm here to buy a boat at the Santa Fe Boat Show.
He then quickly tries to become part of the family by taking Penny out to practice her driving. Later that day, Bojack returns with a boat, which is named by Penny as the Escape from LA. Fast forward 2 months, and Bojack really has become practically part of the family, offering to take Penny to prom to stir up some drama. An adult taking a minor to prom. Great move, Bojack. On prom night, Bojack meets Maddie and Pete. Repeat, Penny's best friends. And not only accompanies them, but also buys them alcohol. However, later on in the night, things take a dark turn when Penny's friend Maddie gets dangerously drunk. They take Maddie to the hospital, but Bojack refuses to go in. He manipulates Pete to say he doesn't know where Maddie got the alcohol from, saving Bojack from any blame. When they get home, Penny kisses Bojack and tries to make a move, but he shuts her down. Charlotte sits in the backyard, and Bojack joins her. Bojack asks her for advice about his problems. He kisses her and tries to get her to leave with him, confessing that he's loved her all this time, but she sends him packing. When Bojack goes back to his boat, Penny is there stating that she knows what she wants. Charlotte, however, goes to talk to Bojack, but instead catches Penny and Bojack on his bed in a very compromising position, like they're seemingly about to undress each other. Charlotte threatens him and says that if he's not gone in 30 minutes, and if he ever tries to contact her or her family again, that she will kill him. The episode finishes with Bojack taking his boat back to Los Angeles, where he finds Diane still in his house. He walked out of some drama and walked into more drama. Oh my god. Episode 12, Out of the Sea. Princess Carolyn brings news to Bojack. the studio wraps Secretariat without him, and won't be suing him for some reason. But Horsing Around Residuals built an orphanage, making him a hero. They visit the orphanage, and even when he's commended by the owner and the orphans, he can't accept the thanks, as he doesn't feel that he's a good person. He kind of isn't.
Or as we call it, the Bojack Horsemanage.
You cannot call it that.
Todd, however, is invited by the founder of Shenanigans to join the Giggle Ship. Later on, Bojack goes to Lenny Turtletop to apologize, but he doesn't really care, as they finish the movie with the face scan of Bojack they did when they first started filming. The computer version did so well that they deleted any real footage of Bojack and replaced it with the computer version. But he is invited to a screening so that he can see the finished product. Todd leaves for the Giggle Ship and says goodbye to Bojack. However, on the Giggle Ship, he realizes that he's been lied to, as Copernicus, the founder of the Shenanigans, is not living in squalor like everybody else. Instead, he is a large, amazing cabin, and is a fraud, as all of his jokes are, in fact, from a book. That's not improv. Back in Hollywoo, Bojack goes to the screening and is blown away. He's introduced to Anna Spanakopita, who tells him that she's going to help him win an Oscar.
I am going to win you an Oscar.
Anna is the best there is.
After the screening, he goes to save Todd from the Giggle Ship. But Copernicus tries to make him question why Bojack is his friend if he sabotaged his rock opera. Bojack reminds him that letting him stay with him was the best thing he did on purpose. He tells Todd he's his best friend, and Todd gets on his ship. When Princess Carolyn offers Bojack Herb's ashes, a typo lands them in the orphanage labeled Gerb. Thankfully, Todd finds the humor in it, and points out that Herb would have found it funny. The scene cuts to Bojack jogging uphill, huffing and puffing. As he collapses, a wise baboon tells him it gets easier every day, but you gotta keep at it. Bojack catches his breath and says, okay. Season 3, Episode 1 starts spreading the news. Bojack is bored by the countless interviews he has to do for Secretariat. When Bojack gets defensive about journalists criticizing Horsing Around, Anna tries to give him a pep talk, but also says that he needs to stop being defensive about the show because he's a real actor now, not some dumb sitcom actor. Princess Carolyn tells both Anna and Bojack that she has set up an interview for Manatee Fair. Even when Anna says he's not ready for it, Princess Carolyn ignores her. Bojack visits Jill Pill in New York, and when Jill asks for Bojack to star in her next project, Bojack declines, as he's trying to win an Oscar and has to think about his legacy.
I'm not interested in being rebirthed, thank you. I'm still recovering from being birthed the first time.
Later that day, Bojack has drinks with an interviewer for Manatee Fair, and Anna tries to rein in the questions only about Secretariat. But when Bojack says he doesn't need to be micromanaged, Anna leaves. Disaster occurs, and Bojack spills the beans about the incident with Charlotte and Penny, as he talks about a girl on his boat in New Mexico and how she trusted him. He then reveals that he's not even in Secretariat, that he was digitally replaced. She says that's quite a story, when it's revealed she was recording Bojack unbeknownst to him. Once he's sobered up in the morning, he realizes what he said. He goes to Anna, but before he even tells her what happened, she tells him she's taking care of everything. She tells him she'll see him at the movie screening tonight. Later on that night, Bojack tells Anna that he doesn't think he deserves an Oscar, because it wasn't in the film. Anna tells him that it doesn't matter. It's only the story that they tell that does. She tells him that he deserves a really good night, and that she knows how to get him there. Finally, Bojack stands in the back and watches the movie.
You deserve a really good night, and I know how to get you there.
After, he's called up onto the stage for another interview. Bojack is asked about Horsing Around, and Bojack says that the show wasn't him, but this movie is. Episode 2, The Bojack Horseman Show. Flashback to 2007, and Bojack and Princess Carolyn are in bed together. Later that morning, Princess Carolyn's boss asks about the scripts that he's read this week. PC goes on to describe one written by Cuddly Whiskers, and suggests that Bojack should star in it. But Marv rejects this, saying Bojack turns down everything that he's given, and only the best agent would be able to get him to do something. So, of course, Princess Carolyn rises to the challenge, turning up to Bojack's and getting him drunk to seal the deal, promising more fun later. Cuddly Whiskers and Bojack are introduced, and Cuddly Whiskers confesses that the show idea came to him when he was in rehab, and unlike his other shows, he wants to dig deeper. He also mentions that he should email him when he wants to stop being the horse from Horsing Around. 2 months later, Princess Carolyn, who slept with Bojack again, wakes up to find Bojack staring at her. He reveals he didn't sleep due to being nervous for the first read-through of the script, but she reassures him that everything will go fine. After the read-through, the executives tell Cuddly Whiskers and Bojack that they love the show, but Bojack fears it might be too safe. However, when Princess Carolyn tries to give advice, Bojack shuts her down and makes fun of her still being an assistant after 14 years. She leaves, and Bojack tells Cuddly Whiskers that they're going to fix the script. Bent out of hurt pride, PC goes to Marv and says that she wants to be an agent. and so naturally, he resigns and warns her the job will ruin her life. That's a balls-to-the-walls promotion right there. Meanwhile, Bojack and Cuddly Whiskers go on a bender fixing the script, adding weird ideas and giving Bojack's characters the catchphrase, "What's up, b****s?" When they finish, they rename the show The Bojack Horseman Show. At the premiere party, Princess Carolyn and Bojack reunite, but she's now his agent. She confesses her desire for a family and leaves, surprising Bojack. Bojack panics before the premiere, but Cuddly Whiskers reassures him. As the show starts, Bojack's catchphrase kicks off the premiere. Episode 7, Stop the Presses. Back to the present. When Bojack wakes up to a papier-mâché of Todd's head on his head, he becomes so frustrated that he rings the newspaper company to complain. The company in question being The Closer. The Closer questions why he's been a subscriber for the last 6 months, but hasn't complained up until now. It started as a preventative measure made by Todd, who was adamant that someone was stealing their food. However, he soon gave it up once he started working on his project with Emily. The Closer then delves deeper, to which he confesses that it is in fact out of guilt as he slept with Emily, Todd's girlfriend, a few weeks prior. We then cut to a flashback at the end of the episode, Love and/or Marriage, where Emily met up with Bojack at the bar after Todd got out of sleeping with her. And of course, Bojack has to overstep the boundaries. After they sleep together, Emily and Bojack argue over whether they should tell Todd. What a thing to hide from your friend. However, when they reunite after Emily has come on board, they act awkward and deny knowing each other at all, let alone sleeping together. While the Closer comes to a different conclusion, Bojack shuts her down and says he has to ring her back. After ending the phone call, he puts his input into the marketing meeting about the new advertising campaign for Secretariat. Lenny and Bojack butt heads, with Bojack trying to push for a mirror ad that says, "You are Secretariat."
How'd that piece of crap get in there? We already ruled that one out.
Bojack's idea is shut down as he's told to leave the decision to the experts. Later on that day, Bojack questions why he and Anna never go back to her place, and Anna says that this mystery is exactly what Bojack wants. Later on that evening, he spies on her in her small apartment being normal, and he's kind of disappointed. Back at the house, Emily surrenders her part of the company to Todd under the explanation that she can't work at Bojack's house. Todd is shocked and tries to push it with Emily, only saying she hasn't been a good friend to him, and that things happened, and that Bojack hasn't been a very good friend to him either. You know, she pretty much said exactly what happened there, but also kinda didn't. That's pretty impressive manipulation, honestly. Bojack goes to visit Anna and demands the ads for Secretariat to be the ones that he picked, saying he won't be pushed around. But it's not the marketing success that he hoped it would be. See, the whole mirror billboard thing ends up just kind of reflecting the sky. Lenny is annoyed he spent thousands of dollars to tell people to nominate the sky for an Oscar, and Bojack admits he didn't think it through. Diane realizes when the sun sets and reflects off the billboard, it could be a huge problem, because, you know, glares from the sun going right into driver's eyes and all that. Lenny sarcastically says at least Bojack got what he wanted. Episode 9. Best thing that ever happened. Back in 2007, Bojack's in a slump over bad show reviews, when Princess Carolyn, ever the supportive agent, tries to cheer him up. They spend the night together. But things get awkward and Bojack wants to keep it casual, and Princess Carolyn wants more. Back in the present day, Bojack is waiting for Princess Carolyn, and Princess Carolyn tries to stall the inevitable. She's getting fired. This is a catalyst for a fight between the two of them, based on 2 decades worth of pent-up frustration. She tries multiple different distractions, which end up in a misunderstanding between the waitstaff who think they're all fired. As the owner of the restaurant, Bojack is made aware that there's a critic tonight, that he needs to think of a solution.
Restaurant critic here tonight.
Very interesting.
Bojack and Princess Carolyn continue to argue throughout the restaurant. When they move their conversation to the meat locker, Princess Carolyn angrily tells Bojack he doesn't want professionalism, just a mommy he can have sex with. Bojack says that he doesn't want to be around her because she makes him feel like a terrible person. Her compliments fall on deaf ears as he continues to go through with the firing. When she questions whether he ever loved her, he replies with,
"You know that I don't do the whole love thing."
Even after no kitchen staff, the critic is still waiting for her food, a mushroom risotto. But even though she isn't employed by Bojack, she still volunteers. But Princess Carolyn can't help but save him. They serve the critic only to find out that she's a critic for a blog on Tumblr. Angry and exhausted, Bojack kicks her out. Bojack says he's a real jerk, and Princess Carolyn agrees. But he still has many other great qualities to him, and she lists off multiple. For her final compliment, she says he let her help him tonight because he knew she needed it. Bojack says she's a good friend, and Princess Carolyn then begs Bojack to not leave her and to give her 6 months. Bojack says no, leaving both of them at a crossroads, unsure of what the future holds for their relationship and career. Episode 10, It's You. This episode opens with Mr. Peanutbutter announcing the nominees of the Oscars, including Bojack. But even with the nomination, he still can't shake off his sadness. Anna warns him not to wallow in it, but Bojack throws a wild party instead. Diane comes to the party to make sure that Bojack is alright, and an argument ensues. He then insults her, making statements such as, "You used to be cool and care about shit. You think you're better than everyone," and saying, "I'm not like you. I don't fetishize my sadness." Diane argues back, stating that after he wins his Oscar, he'll go home and will be so miserable that he'll kill himself with no one around available to stop him. Bojack scoffs this off, claiming the dozens of people chanting his name at his party proves that he will have people around when he kills himself. As the party rages on, Bojack accidentally falls into the pool, but Mr. Peanutbutter saves him. He brings both good and bad news. Mr. Peanutbutter explains that due to the wacky series of events, himself and Todd ended up with the responsibility of announcing the Oscars. However, the envelope with the names goes missing, so they decide to make up the nominees by looking at a list of actors. And so, essentially, Bojack hasn't been nominated. The next morning, Bojack wakes up in a destroyed home. Todd confronts him about Emily after Bojack begs him not to leave. Todd hits back with some harsh truths about his self-destructive tendencies. Todd ends the episode with, "Fuck man, what else is there to say?" thus ending his relationship with Bojack. Episode 11, That's Too Much, Man. The episode opens with Sarah Lynn's positive morning routine now that she's sober. In fact, she's about to mark off her 9th month of being sober on her sobriety calendar. But you know, that's just not gonna last when Bojack is around. After a short call, the two begin their bender and watch old episodes of Horsing Around, but Bojack begins to experience blackouts. After one blackout, instead of going to the planetarium like Sarah Lynn asks, they end up at an AA meeting. Even though Sarah Lynn has fallen off the wagon, she still wants to get her chip. Bojack takes over the meeting and reveals to the group the situation about Penny and Charlotte.
So then I tried to sleep with the daughter. And then the mom walked in on me trying to sleep with the daughter.
After another blackout, we find out that Bojack shut down the meeting and learn that Penny is doing fine despite the boat incident through Sarah Lynn snooping on Facebook. She also suggests he try the 12-step program, and he decides to follow through. They first visit Diane and Mr. Peanutbutter, which goes wrong and results in Diane breaking her wrist again. They then visit Anna Spinacopita, and she explains why they won't work as a couple. However, he blacks out again. Bojack goes back to Anna's, and she says she's not seen him in 2 weeks, and proceeds to tell the story. After that, Bojack has another blackout and finds himself driving to Ohio to make amends to Penny. He sees her, and says that she seems fine and that maybe he didn't ruin her. But then Penny notices him, and she begins to freak out. Back in the car, Sarah Lynn, on her mission to find a bottle opener, finds a pack of heroin nicknamed Bojack. It's the same heroin pack that had been discovered by Bojack and Diane back in Bojack Kills. She tells Bojack that they have to try it, as having a drug named after you is a big deal. Though Bojack blatantly declines, literally saying, "I'm not going to shoot heroin." But later when they're back in LA, Bojack says that he can snort it instead. Bojack then blacks out again and has a flashback to Thanksgiving 2007, where he's at Cuddly Whisker's house in a bid to improve ratings on the Bojack Horseman show. Bojack is tasked with bringing in Sarah Lynn to star on the show. Back in the real world, Bojack wakes up to find himself lying on a bed with Sarah Lynn, who's watching the Oscars. She wins an Oscar for Best Original Song and begins to celebrate, but then becomes regretful as she wasn't there to receive it. After a panic attack, Bojack takes her to the planetarium. While gazing at the stars, Sarah Lynn utters the phrase, "I want to be an architect," the same statement she made to her mother as a child in a flashback from Prickly Muffin.
I want to be an architect.
Bojack reassures Sarah Lynn there's nothing to worry about, because it doesn't matter what you did in the past. He asks if she agrees, but she doesn't respond. He nudges her and says her name multiple times, but Sarah Lynn never responds. Episode 12. That Went Well. The episode starts with Bojack visiting Sarah Lynn backstage at her concert, hoping to persuade her to guest star on his show. Despite her warnings about the perils of fame, Bojack only cares about his agenda. He leaves, leaving Sarah Lynn feeling used and rejected, surrounded by piles of scripts. In a gut-wrenching twist, the news breaks that Sarah Lynn has passed away at 31. Bojack, drowning in guilt, vents his frustrations to Diane, feeling like a poison ruining everyone's lives. Even after a call to Bradley about the Horsing Around reboot, Bojack spirals further. When he talks to Chloe, a young co-star who idolizes him, he sees Sarah Lynn's tragic reflection. When he asks her what she wants to be when she grows up, she says that she wants to be like him. She wants to be famous.
To be famous.
Oh no.
Bojack?
Again, he sees more parallels to Sarah Lynn. Later on, Princess Carolyn receives a mysterious call about Bojack, but her assistant, Judah, dismisses it. We glimpse a teenage horse resembling Bojack on the other end. We then cut to Bojack driving through the desert. It appears that he's about to attempt suicide until he sees something to his side that makes him slam on the brakes. He gets out of his car to watch what made him stop. A group of wild horses running across the plain, offering a glimmer of hope amidst his despair. Season 4, Episode 2, The Old Sugarman Plays. The episode picks up from the last scene, with Bojack considering joining the runners. Instead, he drives across the country to his grandparents' summer home in Harper's Landing, which has been vacant for years. Flashing back to 1944, we see Beatrice as a young girl with her family, including her brother Crackerjack, heading off to war. Fast forward to the present, Bojack's new neighbor, Eddie, a dragonfly, voices his disdain for the neglected house. We are then taken back to the past after winter, where Honey, Beatrice's mother, is frantically searching for Crackerjack's blanket as we learn he has been shot and killed in the war. Back in the present, as the seasons change, Eddie and Bojack begin fixing up the house, and by summertime, their work is nearly finished. All the house needs now is a simple weather vane. In a mission to get a missing weather vane, Eddie plays the piano as a distraction, as Honey, Beatrice's mom, is also singing the same song in the past. While Eddie and Bojack escape from the owners of the barn that has the weather vane, Honey is asked to leave. She has Beatrice drive them home, who ends up crashing into a gas station. Bojack tries to thank Eddie by encouraging him to fly, but Eddie reveals his fear since his wife's tragic death in a plane crash. When a plane approaches, Bojack's attempt to help ends with both of them in a pond, and Bojack ends up pulling Eddie ashore. The episode cuts to the past, where Joseph is furious with Honey over her actions, and she admits she doesn't know how to feel better. She can't stop thinking about Crackerjack. He opts for a drastic solution to her emotional pain: a lobotomy. He believes it will fix her. After the surgery, she warns her daughter about love. Back in the present, Bojack has called a demolition team to tear down the summer home, but when Eddie asks why, Bojack tells him that he's decided to stop wallowing in the past and move forward in life. Shocked, Eddie reminds Bojack that they had just spent the past 8 months restoring the house. The episode closes on him telling Eddie to suck a dumb shit as the house is torn down. Episode 4, Commence Fracking. The scene opens with Bojack and Hollyhock, Bojack's supposed daughter, sitting across from each other, as Bojack warns her that he's bad news and cannot support her. What a thing to tell your potential kid. Hollyhock, however, doesn't really care. She found him because she wants to know who her mom is. Bojack isn't sure, but they start with the president of his fan club, Marcy. The next morning, they arrive at Marcy's apartment, who spills the beans about giving up a baby for adoption. We then learn that Marcy is a photo album of photos and addresses all of the women Bojack has been with.
Not so jealous. So I made a list of every girl he was with, and I found their home addresses.
Because that is not weird at all. They then proceed to track down all the women that Bojack has had done the deed with by using the scrapbook. Learning that one of them has had an abortion, he says that he doesn't want any more of him running around, which upsets Hollyhock. She won't accept Bojack's apology, and after they argue further, Hollyhock says now she has the book, she doesn't need him. He realizes he was in the wrong, and proceeds to speak to every woman he's ever slept with. They patch things up, and Bojack makes up a fake name for Hollyhock's mom. Despite its weirdness, Hollyhock hopes it will be a starting point for her, and her birth mom to connect someday. Episode 5, Thoughts and Prayers. The episode kicks off with Hollyhock trying to wrap her head around the name Bojack dropped as her mom's, but Bojack cops to the lie, leaving Hollyhock in the lurch. Classic Bojack, right? In an attempt to make things right, Bojack vows to help Hollyhock track down her real mom. But when she asks to meet his mom, Bojack warns her it's not going to be pretty. After some detective work with Princess Carolyn, they find Beatrice in an elderly care facility. Imagine forgetting where your mom is. When they arrive at Walnut Springs, Bojack's mom doesn't even recognize him and instead calls him Henrietta. Oof. Her doctor explains to Bojack that her dementia is progressing and she won't be around for another 10 years. But when Bojack plays an episode of Horsing Around, Beatrice's memory clicks into gear, if only for a moment. Bojack's brainstorm to jog his mom's memory with a live episode backfires big time. It sends Beatrice into a panic, and she ends up getting kicked out of the facility.
What I want.
Talk about a major oops. With Beatrice's condition worsening, the doc suggests that she move in with Bojack. That's a curveball. Back home, they mull over their complicated family dynamic, especially the things that Bojack wishes he could say to his mom, but knows that she won't remember. But Hollyhock has got hope. Maybe there's a chance that Beatrice will come around again, giving Bojack the chance to give her a piece of his mind. Episode 10, Lovin' That Cali Lifestyle. The episode begins in Bojack's home with Bojack, Hollyhock, Beatrice, and her caretaker Tina playing Uno. However, it is seen from Hollyhock's perspective, and she seems ill. As Bojack boasts that he's winning, Hollyhock goes to get some water. She ends up dropping the glass and gets cut on her forehead. When Bojack offers to help, she ignores him and stumbles into the bathroom. Just as she responds to a text from one of her dads, she sends a reassuring selfie with the text, "Lovin' that Cali lifestyle," before she collapses. When Bojack tries to see her to the hospital, he's unable because he's not her legal guardian. When her dads turn up, they tell him she overdosed on amphetamines. They blame Hollyhock's decline on Bojack and refuse to let him see her ever again.
Are you insane? You are never seeing Hollyhock again. Look.
A week later, Beatrice once again asks where Hollyhock is and claims that she made coffee for her. Horrified, Bojack rushes into the kitchen and asks Beatrice what she put in the coffee. Beatrice only tells him that it was an old family secret. Upon closer inspection, Bojack finds a large bottle of weight loss pills in the coffee bag inside the cabinet. Ultimately, Bojack confirms that it was Beatrice who had caused Hollyhock's overdose by sneaking them into her coffee. Bojack takes Beatrice to a retirement home, which is even worse than the last one she was in, and puts her in the worst available room. Before leaving, Bojack spitefully tells Beatrice that this is how her life has ended up, her living alone, and says, "Best of luck, I'll see you never." However, just before he leaves, Beatrice recognizes him and says his name, much to Bojack's surprise. Episode 11, Time's Arrow. The episode begins towards the end of the previous one, where Bojack is driving Beatrice to a nursing home after finding out that she's been putting weight loss pills in Holly's coffee. But then, Bojack is replaced by a young brunette woman in a blue and white button-down dress, with an animated black scribble over her face. She agrees with Beatrice's question. The episode dives deep into Beatrice's past, showing us a side of her we've never seen before, as well as a perspective into what dementia truly is like to experience. As the anonymous woman drives the car, the background becomes a white void, and Beatrice transforms back to her young adult self. However, she can see her present elderly self in the rearview mirror. We then have a flashback to her being a child in a school uniform, and we see her being bullied by a goose girl who says that she's too fat. The next day, she tries not to go to school by pretending to be sick. Shockingly, though, her dad finds out that she isn't pretending, as she legitimately has scarlet fever. However, not all is lost, according to her dad, as her throat is swollen shut and will help her lose weight. It then cuts to her being a young adult, where Joseph tells Beatrice about her chaperone to the ball, Corbin Creamerman. Joseph is using the match to his advantage, as it will be good for business. But it is at this ball that she meets bad boy Butterscotch Horseman, who has crashed the party in search of alcohol. Bad boy or advantageous business match? Who would you choose? She disappears and ditches her ball for Butterscotch because it's her party, and Beatrice will do what she wants, right? However, this doesn't come without consequences, as Beatrice ends up getting pregnant. When she confronts Butterscotch, he asks if she's sure that it's his, probably out of fear of responsibility and all that. Then we get a montage of Butterscotch and Beatrice getting married and living in San Francisco. However, it isn't the fairy tale romance that Butterscotch had sold it as. Instead, Bojack won't stop crying, and Beatrice and Butterscotch just keep arguing. Another montage occurs to show the next 29 years, showing Beatrice using the family's new wealth through Butterscotch's new job to slowly remodel the living room. We find out that Butterscotch has got the maid, Henrietta, pregnant and can't talk to her out of having a baby, so he turns to Beatrice to help him. When Beatrice and Henrietta discuss the options, Beatrice says that she will pay for the tuition for Henrietta to go to nursing school.
All right. We'll pay for your tuition.
Really?
However, she has to give up the baby. When Henrietta has the baby, Beatrice takes it and walks away. Back in the present day, just as Bojack is about to drop her off and leave, Beatrice recognizes him. Frightened and confused by her surroundings, she asks Bojack where she is. He responds that she's in Michigan at the lake house. The final scene between Bojack and Beatrice is heart-wrenching, showing us the pain of losing memories and the longing for connection, even in the face of dementia. Bojack asks his mother if she can taste the ice cream. Beatrice's smile fades as she responds to this, as she never got to have ice cream. So she lies and she says, "Oh, Bojack, it's so delicious." Episode 12. What time is it right now? The episode opens with Princess Carolyn pitching Filbert a new TV series. Good news, the executives approved the show based on Bojack being the lead. Bad news, this is Bojack we're talking about. Also, more bad news. Our main star knows nothing about the show as Princess Carolyn has forged his signature. Meanwhile, Bojack tries to reach out to Hollyhock to apologize and is instead told by her dads to never speak to her again. Later on in the day, Princess Carolyn meets up with Bojack to pitch Filbert to him. However, he's distracted. He has an epiphany and heads home to find a pink envelope that Hollyhock had sent to her birth mother, Henrietta, that had been returned. Bojack journeys to Wichita, Kansas to speak to Hollyhock's dads. He explains that although they both share DNA, it doesn't make her his biological daughter. He reveals instead that he is her half-brother. Anything for family, right? But not just that, he's got her mom's mobile number too. The fathers reluctantly agree to give it to her, but orders Bojack to leave. Later on in the day, Princess Carolyn confesses to Bojack that she forged his signature. But regardless, Bojack agrees to do the show. As Bojack is reading the script, Hollyhock rings him and thanks him for finding her mom. She also tells him that she's actually never spoken to her before and is on her way to Minneapolis to visit her. The episode ends with Hollyhock saying to Bojack that she doesn't need another dad, as she has 8 of them, but she's never had a brother. This comment makes Bojack, for the first time, genuinely smile. He's deeply touched by finally making a loving family connection, something he's never really had before. Season 5, Episode 1, The Lightbulb Scene. The episode starts with Bojack questioning Princess Carolyn about his character and his origins. He goes on to express concern about his character to Flip, as well as why the set looks scarily similar to his house. Later on, after having sex with Gina, Bojack asks her opinion on the series, and if it's badly written, who says that it feels gratuitous and male-gazy. The next day, Bojack goes to talk to Flip about the script. He has some concerns about the writing and his character. Flip assures him that it's all necessary, and gets the idea from Bojack to cut the stripper scene, and to only draw Gina naked, as it'll be more motivated by character. Yeah, this was not the result Bojack was after. Bojack and Gina film the nude painting scene. However, Bojack tries to protest the scene to Flip, saying if he's trying to get back at him for criticizing the script, he shouldn't also punish Gina in the process.
I think it's great. It's brilliant. It's unprecedented. I'm gonna get some potatoes.
You see,
Flip tells Bojack that this wasn't his intention. He just wants to make a great show, and he's the only one with a problem. And it just goes from bad to worse, as Flip comes up with the idea to have Bojack star in his nude scene where he has to do a full body rotation while screwing a light bulb. Flip says that he'll go back to how things were before if Bojack admits that he's only giving suggestions to hear himself talk. When Bojack doesn't reply, Flip tells him that they'll shoot the scene tomorrow. Bojack goes to Flip again and tells him that he's not doing the nude scene, but Flip then forcefully tries to take off Bojack's robe. That is no way to treat your actors. Flip tells Bojack that if he doesn't see Bojack on set, then he will see him in court. Finally, after shooting the horrendous scene, Bojack throws a party at his house. At the party, Flip apologizes and tells him not to take things so personally, and that it's going to be a sensational season of television. Episode 3, Planned Obsolescence. Bojack has taken Gina to dinner at Elefante, but Gina doesn't want a relationship with Bojack. Bojack, however, very much so, does want that. Later on that night, when they're filming a scene for Filbert, they have to keep reshooting because Bojack is messing up his lines due to him being so tired from night shoots. When Bojack tries to walk to Gina, he pulls out her headphones and hears a corny musical soundtrack. Gina confesses how she's always wanted to be on Broadway, and Bojack teases her, but later on in the shoot, Bojack apologizes. She accepts this apology as long as he doesn't tell anyone else. However, Bojack reveals he arranged an audition for her to sing for a nightclub scene in Filbert. Gina is angry that he did this, as she doesn't have much faith in herself.
Here's the song, Hell No!
But he assures her that it's her dream, that if she doesn't try now, she's always going to wonder, what if? However, when she takes part in the audition, her voice is hesitant and maybe a bit stilted, and she cracks on the final note. Gina apologizes awkwardly and leaves with tears in her eyes. Princess Carolyn tells Bojack that what he did was mean, both to Gina and to them. But Bojack insists that he was trying to do a nice thing. Later at night, Bojack tries to apologize to Gina, but she stops him, saying that he was right. If she hadn't sung, she would have wondered, what if? Gina then goes to bed, telling Bojack he can have sex with her if he wants to. Episode 4, Bojack the Feminist. Bojack is caught at a forgiveness award ceremony with a disgusted face that the press takes as him not forgiving an actor. He is then invited to go on a talk show and try to explain what happened. However, the host never let him speak. That said, he ends up taking a stand against Vance due to the positive reception that he gets. Princess Carolyn brings Diane and Bojack together in her office and tells them that she brought them together because, with Diane's feminist brain and Bojack's male face, they can say things that people will listen to. Diane tries to teach Bojack about the media cycle and how pop culture normalizes things, for good and for bad. However, Bojack is bored and he doesn't really take it seriously.
Sorry, I know you're trying really hard not to be boring, and it's kind of not boring.
Diane gives up and tells Bojack to just sprinkle in a few words like intersectionality or microaggressions, and Vice News will name him Feminist of the Year. However, the tables turn when Bojack is on MSNBC, and he learns that Vance came out as a feminist. Later on in the episode on Deep Dive, Bojack tries to explain how the audience isn't supposed to like Filbert, and realizes that what the show is doing is normalizing Filbert's behavior. Bojack leaves and asks Diane to come work on the show, as this is her chance to change society for the better. However, Diane says that nothing she does causes any real change to happen, but Bojack says that she changed him. Meanwhile, Flip and Princess Carolyn realize they need someone new, so who better than Mr. Peanutbutter? Now they get more than a crossover episode, they get to do a whole series together. After Diane gets in her car, Anna Spanakopita reveals herself, pulls out a tape recorder, and tells Diane to listen. It's the recording of Bojack telling Heather, the Manatee Fair writer, about what he almost did to Penny in New Mexico. From the episode starts spreading the news. Episode 6, Free Churro. The episode opens with Butterscotch picking up Bojack as a kid in the car, telling him how Bojack and Beatrice ruin his writing day, and then says that Bojack can't depend on women or anyone. It's a hell of a Sunday of parenting right there. Back in the present, Bojack is standing at a podium wearing a suit, and we learn that he's speaking at his mom's funeral. He begins to talk about his mother, but all he can say is that she was born in 1938. She went to a parade once, and he once saw her smoke an entire cigarette with one long drag. It's not a lot to say about your mom.
Smoked an entire cigarette in one long inhale. I watched her do it. Truly a remarkable woman.
He confesses that everything he learned about being good came from TV, where flawed characters constantly show people they care with surprising grand gestures. He still partly believes that it's love, that the grand gestures, when you're a kid, is enough. Depressingly, he was always waiting for that gesture from his mom. In fact, he's still waiting. He turns to the casket and asks his mom to knock once if she ever loved and cared about him. He goes on to say her last words were, "I see you." Bojack then goes on to explain how his dad died and how his mom was left by herself, and that, despite their dysfunctional nature, his family seemed to understand each other. Bojack thinks maybe that's what Beatrice meant when she said, "I see you." He goes on to confess that he's just standing there pretending he understood how to please her, even though he spent his entire life trying to do so. Bojack finally finishes his eulogy by saying Beatrice Horseman was born in 1938 and died in 2018, and he has no idea what she wanted. Bojack walks over and opens up the casket, and then realizes that he's at the wrong funeral. Episode 7, Int Sub. Diane's therapist, Dr. Indira, is meeting her wife for dinner, where she begins to talk about her week with Bobo the Angsty Zebra. We then see Dr. Indira in a session with Diane, who she renames Diana, Princess of Wales, for her story. Diane is telling her about the Bojack tape Anna gave her, with Bojack confessing that he almost did something to a girl, and ponders why Bojack has kept quiet about it. On set, Bojack announces that his mother died, but he doesn't need any condolences. Everyone listens to him, but Bojack is still offended no one wants to talk about it, indicating that he is both in denial and deeply grieving. Dr. Indira provides her with the solution to throw herself into her work, but Diane says that Flip won't let her do anything. Bojack goes to talk to Diane, but Diane tells him that her therapist doesn't want her to talk to him. Meanwhile, Bojack drives to Dr. Indira's office to confront her, but ends up spending the next 45 minutes talking to her, and they reschedule a session for next week.
Wow, how long was I talking?
I hope that was cathartic for you. You want to come back same time tomorrow?
Wait a minute. I see what's going on here.
Therapists. They always get ya. Back on set, Bojack tells Diane how good her therapist is, but Diane says a boundary has been crossed, and Bojack must find a different therapist. Even still, Bojack continues to see Dr. Indira. While Bojack is having another session with Dr. Indira, Diane breaks in and catches him. When they begin to argue, Dr. Indira offers to allow them to have a conversation in her room because it's a safe space. She goes on to say that Bojack needs her more, so she cuts ties with Diane, saying that she's learned to set boundaries. Dr. Indira then tries to get Bojack to talk about his mom to get to the bottom of how he can help. But Bojack freaks out and says she's helped him and doesn't need her anymore. Diane apologizes to Bojack, but Bojack tells Diane that he doesn't believe therapy would work on him because he's too intelligent for it. Needless to say, Diane is bewildered that he hasn't changed at all. After a heated argument, Diane storms into Flip's office and starts furiously typing, where she changes the Filbert storyline to mirror Bojack's life, and includes a scene with a 17-year-old girl. Sassy asks if Fritz didn't show up, what would he have done to the girl? Diane uses an exact quote from the recording that Anna gave her to remind Bojack of what he's done. Bojack's character states he'll never forget that night on the USS New Mexico. When the scene is wrapped, Bojack realizes Diane knows about Penny in New Mexico, and that he's been exposed. Episode 9, Ancient History. The episode opens with Bojack filming for Filbert, however the scenes of Bojack in reality are juxtaposed to him while he's taking his pills. Jeanette tells Bojack that she wants to end the relationship. Bojack goes back to pick up Hollyhock, however, when she comes back to his house, she begins to experience anxiety. After an elderly woman tried to drug me, yeah, I'd experience some anxiety too. I wouldn't be near that house. Hollyhock asks to take his car to the ice cream parlor. He refuses, but she attempts to grab what she thinks are the keys from inside his coat. However, she ends up grabbing his prescription opioids.
What the hell are these?
What? Oh, those,
Why was this?
She begins panicking, thinking Bojack had drugged her, and she dumps them down the garbage disposal. However, Bojack reveals that they were for his back, making Hollyhock feel guilty. Bojack attempts to get more, but he fails. Even when he goes to Gina's house, he has to distract her by saying that he wants to get back with her. But as soon as Hollyhock finds the pills, he takes off. However, they turn out to be the wrong pills, which ends up just being part of a police sting. Once they've outrun the police, Bojack drives Hollyhock back to the airport. She makes him promise not to take drugs again unless they're prescribed to him. While driving away, Bojack starts to feel iffy and shows signs of withdrawal. He then drives his car into ongoing traffic. As Bojack's life continues to unravel, it's clear that his struggles with addiction and connection are far from over. I wonder, will he ever find the peace that he's desperately searching for? Episode 10. Head in the Clouds. We open with Bojack having purposely crashed his car to get more painkillers. 3 days later, Bojack and Gina are getting ready for the Filbert premiere. Bojack then gives Gina a pair of earrings as a gift, as he begrudgingly admits he appreciates her visiting him in the hospital every day, and he likes her. Gina asks Bojack if they're going to be together as a couple at the premiere, but Bojack says the world isn't ready for them yet. Bojack and Gina are on the red carpet, getting their pictures taken by the press. They ask for pictures of just Bojack, which Gina is okay with, but Bojack tells them that they'll want pictures of her after they see her performance. Before the episode starts, Flip and Bojack are up on stage, and Bojack interrupts Flip's speech while referring to him as Herb.
Look, folks, Herb is being modest.
Herb?
I'm sorry, Flip!
Diane is leaving, she runs into Bojack, who's sitting on the steps outside. Diane confronts him about what happened in New Mexico. When Diane questions if he felt any guilt, Bojack says he's had to spend his entire life feeling bad. Diane is shocked and repulsed that Bojack thinks that he's the victim, so she decides to dig deeper and ask about Sarah Lynn. When Bojack tries to explain what happened with Penny and Charlotte, Diane storms off. Gina is being interviewed when Bojack makes his way through the crowd and passionately kisses her in front of all the cameras. The imagery around him becomes disoriented with fireworks and the balloon of him floating away. Episode 11, The Showstopper. We begin with a quick recap of Filbert's success and Bojack's escalating addiction to painkillers. As filming for Season 2 begins, Bojack's dissatisfaction with the scripts grow, leading him to confide in Gina about the eerie parallels between Filbert's storylines and his own life. Princess Carolyn warns Bojack not to mess up his shot at redemption, but as the night unfolds, Bojack's reality blurs with the show's narrative, highlighting the depths of his addiction. Pills hidden everywhere, a haunting note, and a string of past regrets weigh heavily on Bojack's conscience. He first goes to Diane and then calls Charlotte, though luckily Kyle picks up instead. There's then a flash to filming Filbert, where Filbert hangs up and tells Sassy that there is no lead. Gina performs a song called Don't Stop Dancing Till the Curtain Falls, which serves as a haunting reminder of Bojack's destructive patterns. However, he wakes up and Filbert gets out of bed, standing out on his balcony. Bojack chases Gina for his painkillers and says how someone is blackmailing him, but when he shows her the note, she reveals it's just part of the marketing campaign for the show. The line between Filbert and reality starts to blur, culminating in a shocking altercation that leaves Bojack strangling Gina. As Gina is gasping for breath, Mr. Peanutbutter and a few crew members then pull Bojack off of her. As Bojack is struggling against the crew members, Gina says, "What the f*** is wrong with you?" Episode 12, The Stopped Show. Todd is fuming in his office, blasting Flip and Princess Carolyn for halting Filbert's production due to Bojack's altercation with Gina. Princess Carolyn scrambles to do damage control, setting up an interview with TV host Biscuits Braxby to mitigate the fallout. Bojack tries to talk to Gina before the interview and says that he'll come clean about everything. The interview goes smoothly and Gina leaves without talking to anybody. Later on in the day, Bojack goes to visit Diane and asks her to write one of her takedowns about him, but to leave Gina out of it. Diane refuses, saying that she's done writing about or for him. Bojack pleads that the world needs to know that he's a bad guy, but she hits him with some hard truths. It then cuts to Diane driving with Bojack, who's holding a duffel bag, and asks her if his cactus will be okay for 6 weeks, and she assures him that it'll be fine. Bojack asks her if this is a mistake, and she simply replies, no. She returns to the entrance of Pasticious Malibu Rehabilitation Center. Bojack wonders what will happen if he gets sober, but he's still the same shitty person that he's always been. Though sad, she still musters up a smile and waves goodbye to Bojack as he enters the rehab center. She drives away as the sun sets, leaving behind a chapter of pain and uncertainty, but also hope for a brighter future. Season 6, Episode 1, A Horse Walks Into Rehab. We open with a flashback, showing the circumstances surrounding Sarah Lynn's death, and when Bojack is questioned as to the origins of the heroin that Sarah Lynn had, he promises to make changes to his life right then and there. He then goes to his car and opens the door, causing a bunch of drugs, notably heroin and a bottle of liquor, to fall out. Bojack quickly picks up the bottle and chugs the contents. Not suspicious at all. The episode then cuts to the present day, where Bojack is checking in at Pasticious Malibu Rehabilitation Center. The receptionist asks him for a selfie, and just as Bojack declines, he sees Sarah Lynn's selfie on the wall. We then see Bojack in therapy, where the therapist, a horse named Dr. Champ, points out that Bojack has a habit of deflecting, with Bojack then stating that he came to rehab to take responsibility for himself. Later on that night, Bojack ends up escaping from the center with another rehab patient named Jameson, who's on a mission to prove to her boyfriend that she's hot again and then break up with him. When she catches her boyfriend and someone else making out on the couch, Bojack follows her to her father's house. Bojack then has another flashback from when he was 10 years old. He's shown standing outside of his father's office waiting to bring him dinner. With no response, Bojack walks in and stumbles on his father having sex with his secretary. Butterscotch is seen acting uncharacteristically nice towards his son and says that Bojack is growing into a man and gives him a drink. Bojack then blacks out and he wakes up in the car as he and Butterscotch are driving home. Butterscotch then says it would be best if they both just forgot about everything that happened that night. When the receptionist catches them sneaking back in, Bojack questions his punishment for sneaking out as he's broken the rules. The receptionist responds that to everyone who has been in the facility before and is humble enough to take a photo with him. Bojack goes up to his room, looks at the vodka-filled water bottle, and starts to see the same galaxy from the night of Sarah Lynn's death at the planetarium. The episode ends with yet another childhood flashback, with Bojack's parents passed out in the living room, presumably intoxicated. Bojack, as a younger child, sees a bottle of vodka on the ottoman, picks it up and takes a drink. He then crawls into his mother's lap, and he falls asleep. Episode 5. A little uneven is all. The episode starts with a flashback from 1994 with Bojack meeting Herb's replacement, Danny Bananas. However, Dr. Champ interrupts and says Bojack has already told him this story. He reveals that Bojack has been in rehab for 6 months and it's time for him to go home. Despite his initial resistance, Bojack's departure becomes inevitable, further complicated by the realization that he's being replaced by a younger celebrity. There is then a flashback to 1994 again. Bojack asks Sharona why they're doing Sarah Lynn's hair in his dressing room and not hers, and Sarah Lynn explains it's because her stepdad is there and he's being weird. Bojack and Sharona begin to argue and leave the trailer. There's then a water bottle with the starry sky on the vanity in front of Sarah Lynn. Later that day, Dr. Champ finds Bojack hiding under the covers in his room. He begs Dr. Champ to let him stay, saying he doesn't know what he's like in the real world. Bojack angrily clenches his fists and sniffs the water bottle. He takes a sip and he spits it out, throws the bottle out of the window. It lands in a crate of identical water bottles from a delivery. Bojack, in a panic, tells everybody not to drink the water from the bottles. Dr. Champ finishes his bottle and as a result, gets drunk. And Bojack tries to solve the situation and sober Dr. Champ up. This transitions back into another flashback, to behind the scenes of filming Horsing Around, where Danny then lets him know Sarah Lynn had to go home early. When Danny asks Bojack about the alcohol, he denies it, but he then begins to stare at Bojack. He messes with Bojack's hair ever so slightly, and then says his haircut is a little uneven. That's all. The episode ends with Dr. Champ asking Bojack not to leave him, as he doesn't want to be alone in his current condition, and Bojack says that he's going to stay with him.
Excuse me, are you Zachary's father? I think our adopted...
Episode 7. The Face of Depression. In this episode, Bojack returns home from rehab and faces the ghosts of his past, both figuratively and literally. Attending an AA meeting, he encounters Sharona, a former colleague, which triggers a flashback to 1994 where he confronts her about the vodka and tells her she has to take the flak for this one. He then decides to visit Diane in Chicago, and when he finally arrives at the messy flat, Diane admits she thinks she is depressed. Later on that evening, after the two of them have spent time together, he then thanks Diane for believing in him when he didn't believe in himself, and encouraging him to get help. One person off the list to make amends to. He then goes to visit Hollyhock and ends up going to a concert with her and her best friend Tawny. Bojack finds out that the university's drama professor has quit and wonders about her replacement. From TV star to college professor, Bojack definitely knows how to make a career change. At the AA meeting, Bojack confesses he still can't get comfortable in his own house, and Sharona tells him that she's been sober ever since she saw him. We then learn that Bojack has been dyeing his hair as Sharona cuts it, and by the time she's finishing up, he's sporting a shorter and much grayer hairstyle. Bojack then finds out he got the job as the new drama professor and gets on the next flight to the school. However, it gets grounded in DC and Bojack runs into Mr. Peanutbutter, who takes him to the Smithsonian. To Bojack's shock, he sees that his old sweater from Horsing Around is on display. Mr. Peanutbutter then notices the entire kitchen set from Mr. Peanutbutter's house. As the two approach it, Bojack says with a smile, "Well, it looks like you finally got your crossover episode." Bojack and Mr. Peanutbutter then begin to act out a crossover episode of their shows. But Mr. Peanutbutter gets too emotional over the moment and begins crying, not being able to stay in character for his part. After all that, Bojack picks up a tourist leaflet for a Horsetown reenactment. The next day, Bojack goes to the Puritan reenactment Horsetown where he finds a church. and decides to participate in the reenactment for the day. The episode ends with the minister observing that Bojack found solace in their show. He invites Bojack to stay as the show starts again in 30 minutes. Episode 8, a quick one, while he's away. The episode begins at the Hollywoo Reporter with star reporter Paige Sinclair quitting as she's getting married. However, before she can, it's revealed that Sarah Lynn's mother keeps calling the paper to get information about the details surrounding her death. We then see Gina on a new project ranting about how she's worked on projects where she was unsafe with fellow cast members. The scene then cuts to Sarah Lynn's mother, where she tells the reporters her opinion and confusion on her daughter using drugs. She then plays a voicemail from Sarah Lynn, which the journalists unpick for clues. They investigate further and end up at Sarah Lynn's local AA meeting, where one of the other members confesses to seeing her. They spill the beans on the other person that Sarah Lynn was with the last time that she came. And although they couldn't remember who the friend was, they could remember his story, and knew that the girl in New Mexico was called Penny. The reporters then journey to New Mexico. Back at Wesleyan, Hollyhock goes to a house party and has an anxiety attack. A young guy walks up to her and explains what's happening, and even shows her how to ground herself, and introduces himself as Pete. They sit on the fire escape, and Hollyhock tries her beer but ends up coughing it out. Pete explains that he didn't drink at all through college, all because of something that happened in high school. He goes on to tell the story of Bojack at the prom. How the girl was best friends with his girlfriend, that they all went to prom together. Him, his girlfriend, the other girl, and the guy living with her. Hollyhock expresses disbelief that the man went to prom with them. Pete then tells her the man bought them bourbon and practically forced them to drink it. He then tells Hollyhock his girlfriend got alcohol poisoning and he just ditched them at the ER, and that it was no one's fault, except for the older guys. Peter then tells her the craziest part of all. The guy is famous. He's a movie star. However, the biggest bombshell arrives in the final moments when Hollyhock demands to know the identity of the famous man in Pete's story. Episode 9, Intermediate Scene Study with Bojack Horseman. The episode kicks off with Bojack preparing for his big college lecture, battling those classic first day jitters in front of the mirror. But things quickly take a turn when his attempt to wrap up the class early ends up extending their session by critiquing their work. Meanwhile, Hollyhock seems to be pulling away from Bojack, signaling a shift in their relationship dynamic. Could it be connected to the events of the previous episode? As Bojack tries to support her at her rugby game, he's met with her decision to quit the team and focus on her studies. In class, Bojack brings in Princess Carolyn to teach about the business side of acting, leading to a clash of interests when one student catches her eye. Stan's choice between academic pursuits and the allure of Hollywoo sparks tension between him and Princess Carolyn. At Bojack's showcase, Diane, Todd, and Princess Carolyn are all there, but Hollyhock isn't. He goes to confront her and she confesses that she forgot. She then tells him it was her world before he got there, and he could have asked her before taking the position. Bojack then says that his sister could have supported him, and Hollyhock says that they don't know each other, brutally stating that they both had lives before they met. Bojack apologizes for coming to Wesleyan before asking Hollyhock if it was okay, and he admits that it was selfish. Hollyhock accepts his apology, before Bojack runs back to the showcase, with the students inviting him on stage after it's ended. Just when it seems like things might settle down, Bojack receives a frantic call from Charlotte, demanding he intervene to stop reporters from contacting Penny. With tensions escalating, Bojack finds himself on the brink of a major meltdown as the episode comes to a tense conclusion. Episode 11, Sunk Cost and all that. The episode continues from Intermediate Scene Study with Bojack. Amidst the chaos, Bojack's inner turmoil reaches a crescendo as he grapples with the repercussions of his past actions. With the specter of Sarah Lynn's death looming large, Bojack's fragile facade begins to crumble under the weight of guilt and shame. Finally, Bojack confesses to his friends what happened with Penny and Charlotte. His confession sends shockwaves through his inner circle, leaving Diane, Todd, and Princess Carolyn reeling. In Bojack's office, Diane gets a phone call from Paige asking if she knows Bojack, and what night she saw Bojack with Sarah Lynn. They then realize that the reporters are trying to cover what truly happened to Bojack and Sarah Lynn. Bojack confesses to both of them the truth, that he was with her up until the time she died in the planetarium, that he covered his own tracks at the expense of potentially saving her. Back at Elefino, Mr. Peanutbutter finally snaps and tells the reporters to mind their own business, defending Bojack and going on to say that Bojack once confessed to him that he gave Sarah Lynn the heroin. With his reputation hanging in the balance, Bojack is faced with a stark choice: continue to hide behind lies or confront the truth head-on. When Bojack receives a call from Paige informing him that they are running a story about his and Sarah Lynn's relationship, they realize they have a week to minimize the damage. Princess Carolyn and Bojack begin to work on his apology. When Bojack asks why she stayed around for this long, she responds with, "Sunk cost and all that," referring to the sunk cost fallacy. The idea that if you have spent a significant amount of time on something, you're less likely to give it up, even if it gets difficult. The episode ends with Bojack shutting out the lights and leaving his office for the night. Episode 12, Xerox of a Xerox. Bojack finds himself in the hot seat as Biscuits Braxby's interview threatens to expose his darkest secrets. Princess Carolyn and Judah work feverishly to prepare Bojack for the interview, hoping to navigate the treacherous waters of public scrutiny. Face to face with Biscuits, Bojack confesses that the bender is true, that they spiraled together, and that the old Bojack he was before rehab was a Xerox of a Xerox. The next day, we find out that Bojack has nailed the interview, and Princess Carolyn is asked by Pinky Penguin if Bojack would do a part 2. However, of course, Bojack doesn't know when to call it quits, so he agrees to the second part. This time, Biscuits pulls no punches, probing into Bojack's past relationships and questionable behavior. With each pointed question, Bojack's facade begins to crumble, revealing the painful truth behind his actions. All because Paige challenged Biscuits' journalistic integrity, sparking a heated confrontation in an already intense situation. Biscuits then goes on to question Bojack's relationship with women and brings up examples like Marcy, the former president of his fan club, and Penny. Bojack tells her he doesn't know what having power over women means, and he says he barely has power over himself. Biscuits then suggests that he abuses his power over people repeatedly and grooms women, even bringing up Sarah Lynn getting drunk on the set of Horsing Around. We see that 4 hours earlier, Paige and Biscuits had talked to Dr. Champ at the bar, and he divulged everything. Whatever happened to patient confidentiality? Biscuits recaps and pushes the point home to frame Bojack. After the interview, Princess Carolyn hesitantly says the interview didn't go great, and Bojack shoulders Biscuits with the responsibility of the interview going wrong. Bojack then turns up at the Laugh Shack for one last show before his public downfall, where he's approached by another male horse who tells him he hated horsing around. However, he then tells Bojack his baby brother loved it, and any times he hears about the show, it reminds him of his brother's laugh, before the interview begins to hit the airwaves. Episode 13. Horny Unicorn. In the episode, we witness Bojack navigating the aftermath of his damaging interview with Biscuits Braxby. He walks into an AA meeting and is greeted with a cold reception, but not all is lost, as Vance Wagner volunteers to be his sponsor. If the world's opinion wasn't enough on this horse's shoulders, he then told his house is having to be sold due to the Xerox company suing him for mentioning them in his interview with Biscuits. Before he hands his house over, he snatches up the mail and spots a letter from Hollyhock. He turns to Princess Carolyn, begging for a job, but she says he has no offers. Eventually, she takes pity on him and offers Bojack a small part in Mr. Peanutbutter's show Birthday Dad. Mr. Peanutbutter, learning of Bojack's situation, tells him he can live with him forever. The next morning, Bojack wakes up to Mr. Peanutbutter cooking breakfast and tells Bojack he took the liberty of doing his laundry for him and found a letter in his jacket pocket. On the set of Birthday Dad, Bojack and Mr. Peanutbutter are filming a war scene, and Bojack is cast as a dead soldier. At the diner, Bojack gets dinner with Vance. Vance then gets a text from his daughter and tells Bojack she's in trouble, and they need to go to his daughter's college campus. Vance finds his daughter and yells at her for liking one of her mother's Instagram posts with her new boyfriend. Some emergency that was. When Bojack gets recognized, he's told by a student that he believes he got massively sandbagged in the interview with Biscuits before inviting him to a frat party. At the party, a student takes a picture of Bojack on his phone, and Bojack says he shouldn't be at that party. Bojack heads outside, where he tries to call Hollyhock again, finds out her number has been disconnected. He then pulls out her letter and finally reads it. He sadly sighs as he drops Hollyhock's letter on the porch, and he heads back inside. While the contents are never shown or read out loud, it's clear that Hollyhock cut ties with Bojack. The episode ends as the party swirls around him. Bojack is left alone, clutching a bottle of alcohol. Episode 14. Angela. 1994. TV executive Angela Diaz learns that Herb has been caught in a police sting. She meets with Herb and he says, if he's fired, just tell him he's fired. In the present day, Bojack is in his trailer on the set of The Horny Unicorn when he gets a call from Angela Diaz. She says that his interview with Biscuits made her nostalgic, that she needs to see him. Seems that we're about to be taken on a journey through Bojack's past and present, as he grapples with his legacy and confronts the ghosts of his past. Later that day, Bojack goes to Angela's home, and they confront the remnants of their shared history. He questions why she invited him, and she says it's because she needs him to reach a box that she can't. When he opens the box, he sees Blu-ray DVDs of Horsing Around. She explains that because of his interview with Biscuits, the studio can't give the Blu-rays away. She says it's a shame that the show will be forgotten, that there's a way for her to be remembered as something more than the girl that Bojack killed. She says that the show will just be about 3 orphans living together without adult supervision, and offers to buy him out and cut all of his scenes from the Blu-ray release. She confesses that there was a time that she was petrified that he'd leave the show, not that one day she would be asking him to. When Bojack questions it, she playfully jests that it was because Herb was gay, and she was secretly hoping that Bojack would call her bluff. Now that is ice cold. All that lost friendship with Herb because he thought his hands were tied when it was him holding the ropes the entire time. Bojack says he's not taking the deal, and he attempts to throw the contract in the fireplace before slumping down in a chair and putting the contract down. He decides it's time to go, and that he's taking her car as well as the Horseman Around Blu-rays. He then breaks into his old home, forgetting that he no longer lives there. The episode ends with Bojack watching his screen test in his old living room for horsing around. A younger Herb gives young Bojack pointers when he's nervous, and recites Ethan's lines instead of his own. Young Bojack then gets the scene right, and Herb tells him his life is about to start. It serves as a reminder of the innocence and optimism he once possessed, juxtaposed with the harsh reality of his present circumstances. Bojack then turns off the TV, and his reflection is seen on the TV screen. Episode 15, A View from Halfway Down. Bojack's journey into his subconscious takes him on a surreal and haunting exploration of his past, regrets, and his inner demons. This introspective episode starts when he arrives at his mother's house with 6-year-old Sarah Lynn and a hydrangea plant. A younger Beatrice, wearing her debutante outfit, invites them in. In the living room, we meet the other party guests, who are other people who have predeceased Bojack: Herb, Corduroy Jackson, and his uncle, Crackerjack Sugarman. When Zach Braff, Beatrice's butler, announces that there is someone on the phone with her, Bojack tells Herb that he keeps having a recurring dream about having a dinner party with everyone who has died, so he decides to do it for real. During the episode, Sarah Lynn has aged up to her preteen self, and Beatrice informs the group that her husband is going to be late, so they're gonna have to start dinner without him. Crackerjack asks if he's going to be in time for the showcase, and Beatrice says he better be. Before she leads them into the dining room, everyone sits at the dining table, and they're served the last thing they ate before they died.
Water? Thank you, Zach Braff.
And then Beatrice's husband walks in. Although Beatrice was married to Butterscotch Horseman, her husband takes the form of Bojack's childhood hero, Secretariat. Everyone leaves for the theater in the other room, and Bojack says goodbye. When Sarah Lynn asks if Bojack is coming, Bojack says no, as this is the part where he wakes up. However, Bojack starts to get a bit confused, as he's still in the dream. And this is a nightmare you certainly would not want to wake up from. Since he hasn't woken up yet, he decides to go on to the showcase, which is hosted by Herb. First up is Sarah Lynn, who starts to play Don't Stop Dancing Till the Curtains Fall, which quickly transitions into a song to the tune of her song, Prickly Muffin. Towards the end, the song transitions back to Don't Stop Dancing Till the Curtains Fall. Suddenly, a door frame appears and Sarah Lynn walks toward it. As she finishes the song, the door opens, revealing nothing but darkness, and she hops in, never to be seen again. Up next, Herb introduces Corduroy's aerial act. While Corduroy performs his piece, Bojack tries to ask Herb where the door leads. Bojack sits back down next to Secretariat, and Herb introduces Zach Braff. Shortly thereafter, Bojack leaves with Secretariat to smoke. They then have a conversation that ends with Secretariat, through Butterscotch voice, saying that he did care. Bojack brushes off this sentiment. The Secretariat insists that he did care. Bojack voices regret that his dad could never be so honest while he was still alive. Reality starts setting in for Bojack when he realizes that this is the reason he hasn't woken up yet. As Bojack continues to panic, Herb invites Secretariat to the stage. Crackerjack tries to calm Bojack down and guides him back to his seat. Secretariat takes the stage and starts reading his poem, The View from Halfway Down, which recounts the thoughts he experienced as he plummeted from a bridge to the icy waters below. He stumbles backward and falls through the doorframe, disappearing into the darkness. Bojack panics and escapes, but just ends up on the stage instead, where Crackerjack, Herb, and Beatrice try to reassure him. Herb tells Bojack that there's a possibility that somebody's going to find him and save him, that there's also a possibility that somebody won't. Next up is Beatrice and Crackerjack. Crackerjack starts to play I Will Always Think of You on the trumpet, while Beatrice starts to dance. Beatrice wraps herself in the ribbon as she does pirouettes, and Crackerjack ties the end of the ribbon to his waist. He then jumps into the doorframe and disappears. As Beatrice keeps spinning, black tar reaches out from the doorframe and consumes her. She vanishes too. And then, it's Bojack's turn. Herb goes on to introduce Bojack. He takes the stage, approaches the open door, and asks if it's terrifying. Herb reassures him, but also assures Bojack that there's no other side before being consumed by black tar. Bojack tries to escape the tar by saying he needs to make a phone call, highlighting his longing for redemption and connection. Luckily, Diane picks up, and during their conversation, Bojack realizes what has happened. As the black tar consumes him, he talks to Diane about her day. The episode ends with the screen going black and a heart rate monitor going flat, before starting beeping again, indicating that Bojack is still alive. Episode 16. Nice while it lasted. The final episode starts in the living room of Bojack's old house with the series finale of Horsing Around playing on the TV. There's a mess of shards of broken glass, a bag of spilled chips, an ice cream container, knocked over plants, drugs, a stack of Horsing Around Blu-rays on the couch, and a bottle of vodka. Bojack certainly knows how to make his presence known. And if that wasn't enough, the new family arrived to find him floating unconscious in the pool. We then learn that Bojack has been arrested and sentenced to 14 months in prison. We then fast forward to a year later, where he's in prison but allowed to leave for the weekend to attend Princess Carolyn and Judah's wedding. And guess who picks him up? None other than his old sitcom rival, Mr. Peanutbutter. Before the wedding, Mr. Peanutbutter attends a press conference to announce he's returning the D of Hollywoo, but instead, it'll be a B. Bojack, overwhelmed by it all, begs Mr. Peanutbutter to take him back to prison because he doesn't feel that he can be around people. During the wedding, Bojack is alone. However, Todd comes to the rescue and says they need to head to the beach to watch the fireworks. The two of them chat on the beach and they rekindle their friendship. Later on at the wedding, Bojack and Princess Carolyn are dancing, and he tells Princess Carolyn that he thought there would be a disaster, like in a sitcom. Bojack then says he would talk her into going through with the wedding as a symbol of how much he's grown. Of course, even now, Bojack thinks that he's the main character in Princess Carolyn's day. After dancing, Bojack goes up to the roof, where he finds Diane. However, their conversation doesn't have the friendly banter that it once had. Diane wants her phone so she can play Bojack the last voicemail that he left her. She asks for an explanation as to why Bojack called her, and then wishes she had been the person he thought that she was, the person who would save him. She finally tells Bojack that she's glad that he's alive. He admits that he is glad as well. Diane goes on to say that she believes some people help you become the person you end up being, and you can be grateful to them, even if they're never meant to be in your life forever. She also tells Bojack that she doesn't regret knowing him. However, when he jokes it would be funny if this was the last time they ever spoke to each other, she just sadly looks away, which implies this moment probably will be. Before she leaves, Bojack asks, "What are you going to do? Sometimes life's a bitch, and then you die." Diane agrees, but then responds with, "Sometimes life's a bitch, and you keep on living." The series ends in a moment of silence, as Diane and Bojack, both of them struggling to say something, but choosing not to, look at the stars in the sky. And that is the entirety of Bojack Horseman. It's a bit of a downer, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and tell me what show to recap next. I hope you have a nice day, and I will see you next time. See ya!